The world had been dead for 100 years, but it never stopped moving. Cities had collapsed into mountains of rust and bone, yet still the dead roamed their empty streets. Their faces had long since been worn into grotesque masks of rot, yet somehow they did not decay. Their eyes never closed, their jaws never stopped clenching, their nails never ceased scraping at doors that would never open again. He had seen them everywhere. On highways where cars had melted into rust, in houses that smelled like graves, in forests where nothing grew anymore. They followed without reason, like shadows with teeth. He had long since stopped fearing them. Fear was a luxury for the living, and he was not alive. Not really. He moved, he breathed, his heart dragged itself through another beat every few seconds. But he wasn't living, he was only surviving. And survival had become a curse, the hunger. 100 years of searching had hollowed him out. No food remained. The cans were gone, split open, their contents rotted into black sludge. Rats and insects had been eaten decades ago, each mouthful chewed until his stomach twisted with pain. Even the grass, the weeds, the mold, consumed until nothing green dared rise from the poisoned soil. Water had turned to poison. He had drunk it anyway. He had vomited until his ribs cracked. He had woken on the floor, half dead, wishing he had been lucky enough to finish the job. Now, there was nothing left to consume but himself. He gnawed his own tongue for moisture. He pressed his teeth against his arm, once, twice, too afraid to go further, too afraid of what it would mean. Hunger was not an ache anymore. It was a voice. It whispered in his skull, louder each day, telling him to crawl, to eat dirt, to chew glass, to peel away strips of his own skin. He knew it wasn't real, but the hunger didn't care. The silence. The world made no sound anymore. The wind dragged itself across ruined streets like a dying thing. The dead moaned, but it was a dry, hollow moan, a sound that had repeated so many times it no longer felt alive. Birds were gone. Insects were gone. Waterfalls, rivers, rain, all silent. And the silence began to change him. At first he muttered to himself. Then he spoke aloud, whole conversations, inventing voices, giving them names. Sometimes he laughed at jokes only he could hear. Sometimes he wept and begged his invisible companions not to leave. But they always left. Worse were the other voices, the ones that weren't his. He heard them at night, soft footsteps just beyond his vision, whispers crawling up through the cracks in the floor, children laughing from empty hallways. A woman's voice, low and sweet, singing to him in a language he didn't understand. He told himself it was madness. But madness doesn't reach out and brush against your skin. Madness doesn't leave wet fingerprints on your throat while you sleep. The body. He had wasted away. His reflection, when he found a shard of mirror buried in rubble, showed a thing that was not quite human anymore. Hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, skin stretched like paper over the map of his bones. His teeth had yellowed, cracked. His hair had fallen away in clumps until his skull gleamed in patches. Every step hurt. His bones clicked and scraped against each other inside his thin skin. His spine bent. His fingers shook. His chest wheezed. He wondered sometimes if he looked just like them now, the dead. If perhaps they didn't attack him anymore because they recognized him as one of their own. The thought didn't frighten him. It comforted him. The death. When his body could no longer drag itself through the ruins, he collapsed. The broken teeth of the grocery store shelves rose above him, like gravestones. The floor was cold. He lay back and stared at the ceiling, letting his eyes flutter shut. The memories came, as they always did. The beginning, the fire, the screaming faces of his family, the warm taste of bread, the soft laughter of friends long gone. The memories pressed down on him until he could hardly breathe. And finally, he let go. His heart slowed, his chest sank, his body stilled. But death was not the end, the return. He opened his eyes, and he screamed. He was standing, alive, whole, strong again, his skin filled out, his lungs clean, his body unbroken. The world was alive too, or at least alive in its death throes. Smoke rose in the distance, people ran, screaming, pushing past each other. The dead spilled into the streets. The air reeked of fire and blood, the first day, again. He fell to his knees and tore at his face with his nails, sobbing, howling. He begged for the cycle to stop, begged the sky, begged anyone, anything to release him. But no one answered. They never did. And so he lived it all again. The running, the fighting, the hiding, the starvation, the silence, the madness. Decades stretched into centuries. His body withered. His mind broke. He lay down. He died. And when he did, he woke once more at the beginning. The horror. It never ended. Each cycle blurred into the next. Time lost all meaning. He couldn't remember how many times he had been reborn into the nightmare. Hundreds? Thousands? Sometimes the cycles were the same, events repeating exactly as before. Sometimes they twisted, bent out of shape. He would see new faces in the crowd, new horrors lurking in the shadows. Sometimes the dead would speak. Sometimes the sky bled. Sometimes his family lived longer, just long enough for him to hope, before being torn away again. Every time he screamed louder. Every time he clawed deeper into his own skin. Every time he begged for death to be real. But death was never real. The world itself had become his prison. The apocalypse was not an ending, it was a trap. He began to wonder if he had ever truly lived at all, or if he was just a puppet in an eternal nightmare. Perhaps the world had ended long before the dead rose. Perhaps he had always been the only one alive. Perhaps there was no world at all, just this endless, rotting dream. And still, the cycle continued. The curse. There was no heaven, no hell, no peace, only survival, only despair, only death, only rebirth. He was not man anymore. He was the echo of man, the shadow of humanity, a ghost cursed with flesh, the last survivor of the end of the world, forced to relive it forever. And as he screamed into the burning sky once more, he finally understood. The apocalypse was not outside him. It was inside him, and it would never end.